Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man video. We are playing Eldrazi and Taxes, and this time we are running up against an Affinity deck. So this is our opener. It's fairly sketchy. We've got the Temple, which means that we can run out these Wasteland Strangers early, but we don't actually have any way to exile any cards currently. We've got two Thalias, which is kind of redundant in repetition, and we have a land that comes into play tapped, which makes the whole thing a little bit awkward. I think in hindsight, this should have been a mulligan, really. Yeah, I can't really justify keeping his hand in hindsight, but I did, which is regrettable. This one has Inkmoth Nexus, Mox Opal, Ornithopter, Vault Scourge, Signal Pest, which is obviously a pretty speedy start. I mean, nothing too scary as of yet, but obviously threatening quite a bit of damage. Yeah, so I suppose he's only 3 damage, but he's got an Inkmoth Nexus and a Blinkmoth Nexus, so he can activate either of those, and presumably he's got some 2-drops, which could make our life a little bit more difficult. It's already not going particularly well, as we've laid off with the Aether. We didn't find a dual land. We found a Ghost Quarter, which isn't great for us. So we're going to have to run the Shambling Vent, and we actually don't have any plays for the first 2 turns, which isn't great. So our opponent plays Master Ethereum, which makes things a little bit worse for us. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 there. Down to 14. Take up with our Vial. Draw Thoughtless here, which is pretty good. It's going to let us have a look at our opponent's hand. It's obviously a sizable threat, although our opponent's pretty good with evasive threats, actually. So we don't actually have any good blocks. This is our opponent's hand. Either of these cards is a big problem for us, I suppose. Arcbound Ravager can possibly make a lethal threat out of Inkmoth Nexus. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it'd be pretty close. I think you can make his Inkmoth close to lethal. I'm not sure if it's actually lethal, but pretty close if he so wished. So I think I ended up taking the Arcbound Ravager. I think in hindsight, Galvanic Blast was probably the better take, just because he can kill the Thought-Knot Seer with a Galvanic Blast. And yeah, I think this probably leads to me dying. We can put in Stick Thaler into play, but it doesn't make a great deal of difference. Actually, no, it would have done. I think we should have stuck Thaler in with the Vial, our opponent's turn, because that means he couldn't have activated the Blinkmoth Nexus, so he'd have to pay the extra mana. Oh, but it turns out he has a Darksteel Citadel, so yeah, maybe it didn't matter after all. Either way, we're dead here, and yeah, that just didn't go well. Our opponent had a very quick hand, and I think our keep was pretty bad in hindsight. We just shouldn't have gone with this. Should have mulliganed. Yeah, let's go on to game 2. Okay, so here we are, game 2. So what have we got here? So we've got Leaning Arbiter with a couple of Ghost Quarters, which could be pretty good. Ghost Quarters nice in this matchup. Oh, actually, we haven't talked about sideboarding. Let me get back to the sideboard and let's talk about sideboarding. Okay, sorry about that. So yes, so sideboarding. So what have we got against Affinity? So we've got Leaning Relic Warder. That's obviously very good. They've got very light on removal, and it's able to exile an artifact, so that's pretty good. So we definitely want to be bringing that in. Stony Silence also very good. Turns off their equipment, turns off Arcbound Ravager, takes off Steel Overseer, and all their mana producing artifacts. Springleaf Drum doesn't do anything, Mox Opal doesn't do anything. So yeah, it's pretty powerful against them. It's definitely a card we want to be bringing in. I mean, it doesn't completely finish off their deck, but it's makes things pretty restrictive. Cranial Plane's no good anymore, and they're, as I say, very difficult for them to produce mana effectively. So just makes a lot of their cards dead. So yeah, those are the cards I want to bring in. I want to bring Fatal Push as well. I think more removal is better. And I think the cards we want to take out are really mostly the top end threats, I suppose. I think probably take out all the Reality Smashers. How many cards are we bringing in? So bringing in... Oh, I also think bringing in the Pontiff might be good. I haven't tested it a lot, but there's got a lot of sort of 1 toughness creatures and things. So Pontiff would be particularly good, particularly with Vile. If we could Vile it in, and then we could like kill off their Nexus, or Nexi, I suppose is the correct term. But yeah, so we've got 5 cards we want to bring in probably. I think we'd just get rid of all the Reality Smashers, and then I suppose Arbiter's pretty decent. Thalia's not bad as a blocker, I suppose. Yeah, kind of a tough call after that, I suppose. We just find 2 other cards that we're willing to cut. Wasteland Strangler's good here because it's actually removal. Flicker Wisp isn't too bad. Maybe cut a Flicker Wisp. Or one of these 2-drops, I suppose. I suppose we're bringing in quite a few 2-drops, so maybe we should take some of the 2-drops out. Possibly Thalia. It's kind of a bit slow. So yeah, maybe some combination of those cards to take out. Definitely don't think we want the Reality Smashers. Potentially could cut a Thought-Knot Seer, I suppose, because that's also a bit slow. But it is one of our bigger threats, but I suppose we could consider that as well. Definitely want to be on the sort of cheaper end of everything, if possible. So yeah, let's go back to the match. Okay, here we are with game 2 again. So yeah, this is our opener. We've got Arbiter, Sculler, Pontiff, Flicker Wisp. Slightly awkward that we don't have a second coloured land, so Tidehollow Sculler is currently not playable. Going to be on the play though, and we've got Arbiter to play. I think we end up keeping this. I think it's not a bad hand for sure, but yeah, I think it's slightly awkward. We obviously got a few lands. I mean, Flicker Wisp with double white. We've got Orzhov Pontiff that's white-black, and we've got Tidehollow Sculler that's white-black as well. So currently, the Arbiter is the only card that we can actually play in our hand. So I suppose it's slightly risky keep. Works out though, where we draw Cave of Koios. Our opponent doesn't have the most exciting start, which is good for us, obviously. He has an Inkmoth Nexus into a Ornithopter. Gets a Tidehollow Sculler, and take a look at this hand of our opponent's. So he's got Blood Moon that he's bringing in, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it's kind of just as bad for him as it is for me. I kind of find it a little bit interesting. We've probably got more basics in our deck than our opponent does, but I don't know his particular build. So, I mean, yes, Blood Moon would be devastating, but actually our opponent can't cast it with the cards he's got in hand. So I'm not really concerned about that. I think we're going to count that out with the running. Master of Theorem, again, potentially very dangerous, but it's very interesting. Our opponent doesn't actually have the mana to cast it as of yet, and doesn't have any accelerants in his hand. So we're kind of really looking. I mean, Cranial Planes were kind of redundant in duplicate, so I think we probably just take the Ravager. I mean, it takes him off playing anything particularly exciting on his next turn, unless he draws something. So yeah, I think we end up taking the Ravager here, which seems like a logical choice given our opponent seems to be kind of struggling on ways of producing mana. We might live to regret it, but I think it seems logical. So opponent plays Blinkmoth Nexus, must have drawn into that Ornithopter, and I guess he's going to stick a Cranial Plating, given that he's got not a whole lot else to do. So that's entirely fine. We're drawing to Path to Exile, which is good for us. Definitely like to see that. And I guess the play here is either... So we can have an Arbiter and Ghost Quarter one of his lands, or we can Arbiter, keep up Path. Pontiff doesn't really do anything here. Flicker Wisp isn't overly exciting, though I suppose we could Flicker Wisp, blinking out the cave, and then we can keep up Path again. Not that there's any immediate threat from our opponent's creatures, so I can't remember what we do here. I actually quite like, given that we got a second Ghost Quarter, I kind of like the play of Arbiter, blow up one of your lands. Also means that these 3-drops in his hand would be pretty useless, even if he draws like Mox Opal or anything like that. So yeah, I kind of prefer that. I don't think that's what the play we end up going for. I think we were maybe overly cautious around his Cranial Plating and end up keeping up Path. And I suppose also the consequence of going down that route is that we also potentially see ourselves off 3 mana. So I suppose there's risks in that, but I actually think it's probably the better play in hindsight. So opponent plays a Springleaf Drum, hooks up his Cranial Plating and attacks me for 4, which isn't particularly scary. I can Path here, but I don't really think it's necessary. Which in hindsight I think probably made the keeping up the Path the wrong thing to do. Draw Stony Silence, which is very good here, particularly against our opponent's hand, which is primarily Cranial Plating. So we're going to be able to attack for 4 here into our opponent's Ornithopter. We're going to be able to Stony Silence. It won't make the Cranial Plating drop off, it just means you can't attach it to anything else. So the Ornithopter is still a threat while it's got that on it. And yeah, again, I suppose the Springleaf Drum is turned off now. Again, I don't know if we should have Ghost Quartered there. Oh, I suppose he could have paid for it, given... No, actually, yeah, I think we should have Ghost Quartered there again. I think we made a mistake, because we're kind of allowing him opportunities to potentially cast Master of the Ethereum, which we probably shouldn't have given him. But I think my thought here was that probably going to try and Path this Ornithopter, because then he's just got a bunch of Ornithopters and some Cranial Platings he can't attach. But we could have done both, so I think we will do both, but probably should have not let him untap with the and give him the opportunity. So we Path the Ornithopter with the Cranial Plating on it, which now gives him not a whole lot to do. And we're also going to Ghost Quarter the Inkmoth Nexus with the potential to Ghost Quarter the other Nexus now, after attacking for 4, of course. And we still have the 3 mana on our side of things. So yeah, Ghost Quarter away to the land, Flicker Wisp, and yeah, that opponent concedes to that. I think the plan with this Flicker Wisp was to blink our own Tidehollow Sculler. That gives him back the Ravager and then returns the Tidehollow Sculler to play, which would allow us to take a look at these cards in hand. I mean, I suppose we already know what 2 of them are, so there's only 1 mystery card, but it gives us an untapped Sculler, and it just gives us another chance to potentially disrupt him. I mean, he hasn't got a lot of plays left with 0 mana and Stony Silence kind of breaking him down in that respect, in the terms of he can't actually draw. Darksteel Citadel won't tap for mana, Mox Opal won't tap for mana, Springleaf Drum doesn't tap for mana, so he's extremely restricted on mana at that point. I think we could have played that slightly better, and we probably should have gone more heavy-handed into the Ghost Quartering, as we did give him a few outs that we possibly didn't need to give him, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. Leonardo did a lot of work in this particular game, and as did Ghost Quarter, I suppose, in really disrupting our opponent and giving him very limited resources. Our opponent's hand was fairly slow as well, I suppose, in hindsight, and I'm not really sure about Blood Moon in Affinity. I suppose it could work, but it's kind of slightly sketchy, because it just turns off all your mana lands, which is kind of annoying on your own end, but I suppose you could. He thought it was particularly effective, but we're running a decent number of basics, so I don't think it's particularly great against us. It does turn off Eldrazi Temple though. Okay, so here we have game 3. So yeah, this hand's not bad. I mean, we've got removal in the form of Fatal Push. We've got Tideholler's Sculler to take a card from hand if he hasn't already emptied his hand. By the time, obviously we're on the draw here, so yeah, time is kind of tight, but yeah, we've got a removal spell, we've got Tideholler's Sculler, we've got Thalia, which could potentially slow him down, although we are on the draw here, and then Flicker Wisp is obviously decent. We've got Eldrazi Temple as well, which isn't bad. So yeah, I don't dislike this hand. I don't think we particularly want to mulligan it away. It's not the fastest, I suppose, and we don't have Stony Silence, but we only have 2 in the sideboard, so we can't really rely on getting that consistently. Opponent has Citadel, Springleaf Drum, Mox Opal as a lead-in, Signal Pest, and I'm going to see Vault Scourge here. Yeah. Okay, so a reasonable start for our opponent. Obviously dropped a lot of his hand there, which makes this Tideholler's Sculler, or Tideholler's Scullers, as we draw into another one, slightly worse, but I don't think our opponent has a lot else going on. So he's sort of emptied his hand with very little else going on, and he's only really attacking us for 2 at this point, which isn't too scary. Tideholler's Sculler confirms the situation. Our opponent only has a Citadel and a Inkmoth Nexus in hand, so not a lot going on beyond their sort of speedy first turn. Obviously, kind of, I guess, hoping to draw a Cranial Plating or something more disruptive. We're kind of happy taking 2 at the moment, which kind of obviously plays well for us, and we're going to play this Vial out here, and Thalia this turn. It's just a good body, and obviously potentially can disrupt him, given that he's not exactly doing well on mana. Opponent plays Master of Ethereum, which is slightly scary at this point, 7/7. But we have the Fatal Push to deal with that, which is why we're glad we didn't bust that out any earlier. So we're going to take a few points of damage here, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, well, 3 points of infect damage as our opponent started to attack with Nexus rather than the Blink Moth. I'm not sure whether that's necessarily the right choice, attacking on both angles there. But yeah, so we're going to take 3 infects and take 4 from the other creatures. So we're going to go down to 12 and then have 3 infect. Our opponent has an 8/8 Master of Ethereum, which is going to get Fatal Pushed eventually, but we'll have to see how we want to play this. So we draw into Eldrazi Displacer, which is very good. Makes his attacks a lot less good generally. Also, Eldrazi Temple doesn't just discount Eldrazi, it discounts their abilities as well, so it's only going to cost us 2 mana to actually activate Eldrazi Displacer's ability. When you can activate it twice, it's very, very difficult for opponents to sort of get through. We also have a Flicker Wisp in hand, which we can combo that with the Displacer and do all sorts of irritating shenanigans for our opponent. So yeah, we're going to run out the Displacer here for the reasons I just explained, and we're going to keep up Fatal Push, remembering that it's going to cost 2 mana this turn. So yeah, the tricky thing here is that is that we're not going to be able to activate Revolt. Basically, our deck's not very good at activating Revolt. We can use it with Ghost Quarter, I suppose, but the problem here is that we've got Thaler in play, but we don't want to not cast anything this turn, kind of want to advance our board still, so the plan here is basically to chump the Master of Ethereum with Tide Hollow Sculler, because we're not going to lose too much to that, because our opponent doesn't get a card back because we never took one. Yeah, we're going to chump the Master of Ethereum, and then we're going to use the Fatal Push to get rid of it. Does mean we're going to take some damage here. Our opponent's going to pump up the Inkmoth Nexus. I'm not too worried about the Inkmoth Nexus because we've got Ghost Quarter, so it's not very likely we're going to die to Infect, which is kind of why I question our opponent's strategy to use the Infect. I suppose it gives him another axis to go on, but the fact is we have Ghost Quarters, and we're going to be able to get rid of that Inkmoth Nexus if it ever does become a problem. Whereas if he attacked with the Blinkmoth, we would be going down a lot lower life total and would probably be a lot less comfortable. So as I say, we chump with the Tide Hollow Sculler so we don't take any damage from the Master of Ethereum. We take damage from the other creatures that obviously have evasion, which is slightly problematic, but we are going to be able to Fatal Push away the Master here, which is going to reduce our opponent's attacking capabilities. Going to take up the Vial. On our turn we draw Stony Silence, which isn't too bad. I'm going to use the Vial here so we can play the Tide Hollow Sculler for free before we drop the Stony Silence, just to turn off our opponent's mana engines and obviously stops him from just drawing a Cranial Plating and killing us on the spot. I suppose he can't really do that with the Eldrazi Displacer in play, but you know, I thought probably a good idea to get this down. Although we're going to have to pay 3 for it, so it wasn't necessary. I mean, I suppose it turns off our Vial, which is obviously a little bit annoying on our own end of things. And it also means that we're not going to be able to activate Displacer this turn. But we're in a fairly comfortable state. If our opponent activates both Blinkmoths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he can act for 6. He can't kill us. And obviously Stony Silence kind of helps on that end of things. We're not going to see an Arcbound Ravager come down and sort of change the combat math. And we're also... yeah, we feel fairly safe in our position at the moment, and we've got Ghost Quarter up as well. So if he activates Inkmoth and makes it big enough, then we can just kill that off with the Ghost Quarter. And if he goes for Blinkmoth, then he doesn't have a lethal attack as it stands, and we're just going to go down to 2. Well, if he activates both his Inkmoths. Oh, he can't activate both his Inkmoths. Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, yeah, I forgot about this. Dark Seal Citadel, as it's an artifact, and Stony Silence doesn't have any exception for mana abilities. Basically, you can't generate any mana with it, so he can only actually activate one of the Nexus. So he has to activate the Blink. He ends up activating the Blinkmoth rather than the Inkmoth. I don't really want to Ghost Quarter one of the Blinkmoths, given he's got a replacement, and also we are in a slightly precarious position in terms of infect damage, so we kind of want to kill the Inkmoth rather than the Blinkmoth, potentially, but obviously we'll do what we need to do. But given this isn't a lethal attack and we're just going to go down to 4, fairly happy with our position. So yeah, I'm going to go to 4 here. We take up the Vial, but it doesn't do a whole lot. We draw Relic Warder, which is pretty good. Probably going to use this to get rid of the Signal Pest, which means our opponent's attacking for 2 points less each turn, basically. And we can also keep up Eldrazi Displacer mana here. So we can keep up the Ghost Quarter and the Eldrazi Displacer. If we need to, we can use the Ghost Quarter, but otherwise we can just activate the Displacer. But draws another Signal Pest, which is mildly annoying, but I think we can live with it. He's going to attack for 2 here, and we can just blink one of his guys. So we can just blink the Vault Scourge to prevent our opponent gaining any additional life. And we'll go down to 3 here. which is fine. Vial's not particularly relevant, so yeah, so now we've got Eldrazi Temple, Plains, and then 3 other mana. So we can double activate our displacers here, which is going to make attacking for our opponent very difficult. And meanwhile, we're just going to be able to fairly freely attack into our opponent. Actually, we're not going to do that here, but yeah, we're going to play the Flicker Wisp out, because that means we've got a flying blocker, so we can trade if we so wish, or alternatively we can blink the Flicker Wisp and do some shenanigans with that, basically. And I think thereafter we're going to have a double Eldrazi Displacer activation up, so it's going to be very, very difficult for our opponent to do anything meaningful. In terms of attacks, he's also on 7, and we basically got 3 attacks into our opponent. So as long as we can preserve our life total, which we can very effectively now, we shall be fine. So yeah, I blinked out the Cave of Kolios with Flicker Wisp, which means that then we can activate Eldrazi Displacer and use the Ghost Quarter if we so wish. I think that's what we're going to do here. I think we're going to Ghost Quarter the Nexus, so we don't take 2 from that. Wasn't strictly necessary, but we're fairly safe from the Inkmoth Nexus now, thanks to Displacer. So I could have traded here with the Vault Scourge and the Flicker Wisp, but it's not nearly as fun as blinking out Flicker Wisp, and then we can blink out. So yeah, so we blink out the Flicker Wisp, which means we don't take any damage from the Vault Scourge because it was blocked. And then we're going to take advantage of the use of the Flicker Wisp and use Tidehollow Skull to see what's in our opponent's hand on the end of turn. One plays a Steel Overseer, which presumably is the only card that he had left in hand that was of any use, which isn't particularly useful with a Stony Silence out. And so yeah, we're glad we played that, I suppose. Actually, it worked out pretty well, to be honest, because these Dark Seal Citadels don't really do anything, and you can't really activate Plating, and Steel Overseer doesn't really do anything either. And yeah, I think our opponent's just dead anyway, is he? He did concede. I suppose he could have chumped. Taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Yeah, he's just dead, basically. He doesn't have any good blocks, and not enough to actually finish this off. And even if he did have a block, I suppose we have the Displacer, which could prevent that from being relevant. So yeah, so we finish our opponent off there. So yeah, that was the match. Managed to win the post-sideboard games. Kind of a sketchy keep on game 1. It was pretty bad for us. But yeah, after sideboard, things look a lot better, and we can make our deck a bit more streamlined and a little bit quicker to meet our opponent. Still, obviously, their deck's very fast, very explosive, and we're kind of light on removal, which makes things a little bit more tricky. I think we were a bit fortunate. Our opponent had some slower hands, really, I suppose, for Affinity. But yeah, we've got a lot of disruption and ways to make their life difficult. And it worked out here and managed to give us the win.